Good afternoon and welcome to Imola Racetrack for the 2023 Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix. The decision has been taken not to proceed with the real-life race, but that's what the Beagle Sports Network is for, ladies and gentlemen, as we bring you the simulation of this 19-turn, 3-mile track here in Italy. The 6th round of the 2023 World Championship getting set to begin, and in a moment we will take a look at the starting grid as we take a look here at the track. Beautiful day for a race, a contrast from the conditions in real life, but let's take a look at the starting grid right now. It's going to be Sergio Perez starting with Carlos Sainz, Red Bull and Ferrari occupying the first row. Lewis Hamilton starts with Charles Leclerc, George Russell with Max Verstappen, Fernando Alonso and Yuki Tsunoda. Guan Yu Zhou with Esteban Ocon, Valtteri Bottas with Daniel Ricciardo, Lando Norris and Kevin Magnussen, Pierre Gasly with Mick Schumacher, Alexander Albon starting with Sebastian Vettel, and at the back it's going to be Nicholas Latifi with Lance Stroll. Final preparations being made here at Imola for the 2023 Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix, and in a matter of moments I will be joined by my assistant secondary commentator Mathilda Wallace, as there you see Pierre Gasly, part of Team AlphaTauri, making final preparations for the race, as well as the rest of the drivers. We will bring you the start coming up next on the Beagle Sports Network. But before we take you to the start of the race, ladies and gentlemen, we want to go back to 2 weeks ago in Miami. George Russell with a huge commanding lead to take the win just outside the Hard Rock Stadium, home of the NFL's Miami Dolphins. As you can see on the scoreboard, he had a 14-second lead over Sergio Perez. He cruised to a victory. Of course, Perez starts in the first row today. We'll see what both Russell and Perez are able to do. And it is lights out and away we go at Imola, the 2023 Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix getting underway. Sergio Perez in pole, he takes the lead. Carlos Sainz behind him. Lewis Hamilton with Charles Leclerc. George Russell in 5th, Esteban Ocon in 6th. Verstappen in 7th. And as I mentioned, I am joined by my secondary commentator Mathilda Wallace, an expert in F1, hoping to,
Thank you for having me.
clarify some things, because she probably knows more about it than I do. And Perez,
Thank you. It's an honor to be here at Imola.
with the lead
It's a very
here,
interesting track we have here.
about a half second over Sainz. His teammate Leclerc following behind. Hamilton and Russell, the two Mercedes teammates, together as well. Two Red Bull teammates separated by 7 positions. Perez out in the lead, Max Verstappen in 8th, which is somewhat unusual for a driver of his caliber. Would you say?
Absolutely. It's an interesting start for both the Ferraris and the Mercedes, actually. 2, 3 and 4, 5.
Now I believe coming closer to the start-finish line in full view of the grandstand and the pits into lap 2 of 16. We go, and it is still Perez, the pole position driver, with the lead. Do you think, that's very early in the race, but do you think he has a chance of coming away with the win?
He may be able to pull it back, but this all depends on the pit strategy, on the tyre strategy, and of course weather.
And you see there, Charles Leclerc, next week is going to be very, very important for him. It's the Monaco Grand Prix, and he represents Monaco on the world stage, perhaps their most famous sportsman. A very small country, but a very rich country, and iconic for its race. And he will be the hometown, home crowd favorite going into next week. So if he can pull out a win here, it would be a bit of a morale boost, I would think, going into that race.
Yes, the Monaco track famous for its tunnel, which is very impressive.
Well, not just the tunnel, but a very complicated set of turns, really everywhere, right by the marina.
And Imola, in contrast, is quite hilly, isn't it? There are a good few chicanes and hairpins, but all around, a good track for overtaking. It's got some good challenging straights as well.
And the Monaco course, built on the streets, as far as I know anyways, reminds me a bit of the Miami Grand Prix a couple weeks ago, just outside of Hard Rock Stadium, home of the NFL's Miami Dolphins. And there you see Leclerc once again, Lewis Hamilton and George Russell, the two Mercedes teammates, as I mentioned, still together. Oh, wait a minute, what's going on here?
Oh, big lockup.
Esteban Ocon has been hit and he's gone.
Ocon spins. He's
Spins out into the dust. And the yellow flag is waving.
Is this the end of Esteban Ocon's race?
And this is just a testament to the unpredictability of Formula 1. He was just in the top 10 and now he's in last, but he's, at the very least, he seems to be okay coming out of the crash, but an 11-second gap. Huh?
He's been able to pull it back, so we'll see if he can make up that time.
An 11-second gap behind Nicholas Latifi. As we go to the helicopter view for a second, it seems Carlos Sainz still following Perez. But it's going to be a lot of work for Ocon to catch up to Latifi and Stroll and the rest of them. And I highly doubt he'll be in the top 10 at the end of the race, but you never know. As we say here on the Beagle Sports Network, pretty much anything can happen. And it indeed has. As we come to lap 4 of 16, 25% of the way through the race here at Imola. And of course the real race being cancelled or postponed or whatever due to inclement weather, but that's the greatness of the Beagle Sports Network. A bit of a stand-in.
Closing the gap now, only a 0.3 second gap to Sergio Perez.
And again, going to the...
Along this straight
Excuse
now,
me.
Sainz maintaining a healthy slipstream.
Again, going to the helicopter view, Perez still out in the lead, and this gives us a bit of a better view of the scenery and the surroundings of the drivers here in the Italian countryside. And now to the driver's view, you see Sainz chasing Perez, and I apologize if you can't hear me or Mathilda. But
nice chicane there. Sticking to the apex, 2 wheels over. Still within the FIA regulations, that's very commendable.
And now to Leclerc's view, chasing his teammate in Ferrari. And coming once again to the start-finish line, lap 5 of 16. And do you think they'll be pitting pretty soon? Or
I expect to at least see one pit soon. What do we think about the tyre strategy? Most people are on super softs at the moment. Do you think we might be able to see a change to the softer tyre?
Perhaps. Perez still leading, but not by much. Just a 0.3 second gap there, and at any moment Sainz could take the opportunity, or at the very least try to. It's best to do it on more of a straightaway.
Absolutely.
And now Perez beginning to break out a bit. 0.5 second lead instead of 0.3 as it was just a couple of moments ago.
Overall, we haven't seen a lot of movement from the front runners in general. Track positions, the Mercedes and the Ferraris have been able to maintain that 2, 3 and that 4 and 5.
Well, if we've seen movement from anyone, it's definitely been Esteban Ocon. He's doing better, you would seem. It was an 11-second gap after the crash. Now it's 9, but again, to recoup those losses, it's going to be quite a difficult feat. And as I mentioned, he was in the top 10. He probably will not be at the end of the day. Across the start-finish line they go once again. Sergio Perez still with the lead. He has had the lead ever since the start of the race. If you are just joining us, he qualified in pole position Sainz and Leclerc, the two Ferrari teammates chasing him. They're being followed by Lewis Hamilton and George Russell for Mercedes. And then in 6th, it's Max Verstappen, Perez's teammate in Red Bull. And apologies for whatever that is. Everything alright on that end?
Yes, all seems alright. It's interesting to note that Max Verstappen, who's normally either in the top 3, is now in 6th.
Mm-hmm. I believe he was the standings leader going into Miami. Not sure where he is now. As we go once again to the cockpit view for Sainz to see what he sees as he continues his pursuit of Sergio Perez. It's only a 0.3 second gap, but he still hasn't been able to take an opportunity and go after the lead. And now you can see Perez starting to break out a bit on the straightaway, but they'll get closer and they'll get... That was a perfect opportunity there. They'll get closer as they come across the turns. And Sainz will go into the pits.
Into the pits. I'm Sainz.
And we're now going to see some interesting moves being made here. And you never know who's going to end up in first after this. If you go back to 2 weeks ago at Miami, George Russell took the win only because of the pits. And he was able to surge out to a 14-second lead over Sergio Perez, who of course starts in pole today. And we recapped that at the beginning of this broadcast. But even with the pit, it is still Leclerc chasing Perez.
We're really seeing the driver order really be shaken up now.
Well, except for the top 2, but...
It just goes to show that any pit stop can really make or break.
You're right. Verstappen now back to 13th. Lewis Hamilton in 12th, while George Russell is in 3rd. They're teammates, and they were once together. Leclerc is in 2nd, his teammate Sainz in 11th. And after all this, Esteban Ocon still in 20th place. Like I said, it's going to be quite the journey to get those positions back, if he can overtake Latifi at all, and will most likely be towards the end of the race.
So we see Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen, the rivals that we normally see competing for the championship, and now in P12 and P13.
Now the chase into the pits, both Leclerc and Perez giving up their high positions for a change of tires.
Pole.
And it's going to be George Russell in the lead, as he was in Miami, and things getting a bit shaken up here. Kevin Magnussen now jumps up to 2nd place, or P2 as you would say, but it's a 15-second lead for George Russell. It was a 14-second lead in Miami, and we're now at the halfway point of the race, 8 laps, 8 to go. Lance Stroll in 3rd. You're right, it really shakes up the order, the standings,
Absolutely.
The leaderboard.
Kevin Magnussen, for example, we never usually see him this far forward up the grid.
We saw it in Miami 2 weeks ago. You weren't there, but he was in 1st for a time, although he was driving quite erratically. But the only reason he wasn't 1st was the safety car, which I believe was summoned by Magnussen himself. So again, the unpredictability of Formula 1 that I mentioned with the Ocon crash in the 3rd lap. As we see Sergio Perez, formerly the leader of the race, he hasn't gone down too terribly. He's in 5th, where he was once in 1st, qualifying in pole. Do you think he'll be able to get back up there, or is this the end of the day for him halfway through the race?
It largely depends on how well Sainz can defend and if he can get past George Russell's Mercedes.
And speaking of George Russell...
It's interesting to note that Lance Stroll and Sebastian Vettel have 15 grid places in between them. That shows the power of the Aston Martin and truly the unpredictability of this race.
Well, it's the power of the pits, if you will. And you mentioned George Russell. I was going to say he's now out to a 17-second lead over Kevin Magnussen. And that is why we're not focusing on him. We're focusing on Perez and that cluster of cars right now, because it is very obvious who the leader is, and it doesn't seem like he's going to be overtaken at any point in the near future, unless, of course, the pits claim him. And a bit of an interesting situation here between Sainz and Stroll, jockeying for third place, and it's going to be Sainz breaking out to the lead. 3 cars behind him, but Stroll juts out to fourth, leading that pack. There you see Kevin Magnussen up front. Carlos Sainz trailing him by 2 seconds. Lance Stroll still pursuing Sainz.
Do we also think that the tyre strategy, this soft tyre that they're using, do you think that's had an impact on the race order as well?
Perhaps. But I think it really comes down to the pits and how that sort of shakes everything up. And I feel like next week in Monaco, the interesting factor to note will be just the, how do I say this, how narrow the track is. It's one of the most unique tracks, not just in Formula 1, but in all of motorsport, and
it's very difficult to overtake there, so it would be
difficult to overtake, difficult to navigate as well. The 6th turn, the tunnel, all of that, and to be mindful of the FIA regulations by the marina. Even though there's that wide open space coming out of the tunnel, there's a very specific course that needs to be followed, so we'll just see what happens 5 days from now. Friday, May 26th, we bring you the Monaco Grand Prix. As we take a look from the viewpoint of George Russell once again, his point of view, way out in the lead, 19 seconds over Kevin Magnussen.
Almost a 20-second lead, so he could pit if he wanted to, and still not lose.
He could, and I believe he will.
And in he comes to the pits. In he comes.
And it seems as though you have been given the gift of prophecy. Or maybe you just have an area of expertise that I do not possess. But that's why I've called you on here.
Well, thank you for having me.
Russell, coming out of the pits, we'll see if he can maintain his lead. Magnussen also in the pits. And, you know, I can't really trust the leaderboard until all is said and done. And George Russell has indeed fallen behind. And the 2 Ferrari teammates battling for the lead now. Carlos Sainz in first, Charles Leclerc in second. And as I mentioned, something interesting for Leclerc, some motivation to come in as the winner of the previous race in his home country, his hometown, Monte Carlo, Monaco. And he's had some very interesting interactions with Princess Charlene over the years. We'll have to keep an eye on that as well, no matter where he ends up in the final standings.
Yeah. Esteban Ocon is closing the gap between him and Nicholas Latifi, now on a 2-second lead.
So he is. You seem to pay more attention to the leaderboard than I do. I'm just watching the race out here from whatever position the camera crew decides to bestow upon me.
Other things to note, we've also got Fernando Alonso having a healthy P7.
And he's Ocon's teammate. As we come to Leclerc's first-person view, as he continues to chase his teammate into lap 12. 4 laps to go here at Imola.
We are Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen that have climbed their way back up the grid to P4 and P5. Do you think we'll see any more action out of them, or do you reckon their places are set?
I think we'll just have to sit back and just... what happens, happens. That's what I'll say. Only time will tell. But right now, at least, it is Sainz and Leclerc. The pits have sort of dictated the positions so far today, but that doesn't mean they're... that doesn't really dismiss the possibility of some late drama.
Yeah, Lance Stroll, who was previously in second at one point,
now in 18th.
Now in 18th.
Like I said, the pits. But as I was saying, late drama for those of you who followed our NASCAR series in the short time that it ran. You'll recall Chase Elliott's win of the Daytona 500 back in February, stealing it in the last lap. And of course, I'm not sure whether you're familiar with NASCAR or not, Mathilda, but it's what we used to cover here. But with all due respect, I find Formula One to be somewhat more interesting.
Absolutely.
And now Leclerc getting pretty close, and I believe this is the moment.
And
as they come around the turn, still trying to get him. It's still Sainz, and he's closed the gap now.
Not enough.
But that doesn't mean he's out of the woods. Now he's desperately swerving, trying to maintain his lead. Do you think it's inevitable? Or do you think he has a chance?
It all depends on what happens in these final 3 laps.
Yeah.
With Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix.
And now Sainz sort of enlarging the gap a bit, breaking away from his teammate, but now competitor, rival if you will. But it's going to be big points for Ferrari, no matter what happens here, I think.
Absolutely.
Perez and Verstappen, the two Red Bull teammates now together. If you recall, Perez qualified in pole position and led the race in the early going, actually for quite a significant portion of it. Do you think he'll get back up there, or will he have to settle for third or worse?
Perhaps he was under attack. He nearly overtook Charles Leclerc, so maybe we'll see Perez back up in the front row, but we shall see how it plays out. It's interesting to note that Lando Norris and Daniel Ricciardo, out of the two, Lando Norris is the one that's made it into the points when Daniel Ricciardo has had so many more years of experience.
And once again, the helicopter view as we follow this high-speed chase, if you will, between Sainz and Leclerc. And the two Red Bull teammates you can see following behind. Also, Mercedes United, Hamilton and Russell. Leclerc trying to make his move on Sainz, and here it is!
Oh,
and he's cut him off, and he's taken the lead. In lap 14, Charles Leclerc passes his teammate,
at the last moment.
Carlos Sainz. And now all he has to do is hold on for 2 more laps, and he'll have that morale boost going into Monaco.
Through the chicane again, and Charles Leclerc is doing a fantastic job of maintaining that lead.
He has never won at Monaco, I believe. Is that correct?
He is not, but this is Imola, so we're about to see. Through this hairpin now.
Like I said, the morale boost. And coming up to the start-finish line once more. Into lap 15 of 16, 1 away from the white flag and 2 away from the checkered.
It's interesting to know that Esteban Ocon has actually regained that place from Nicholas Latifi. He now has a
I never noticed that, but some small consolation after that crash in the 3rd lap. It's not a win, it's not even in the points, but perhaps, as I said, he's just passed Lance Stroll as well. Perhaps, as I said, some very small reassurance.
Do you think there might be an engine issue with Lance Stroll? Because he was maintaining a good 2nd or 3rd. Now he's in P19. What do you think happened there, Beagle?
I don't know. I suppose we'll have to wait until the headlines come out, but there's been, like I said, the pits have really dictated the pace here today.
We've hardly had any track issues. Oh, slight lock up there from Charles Leclerc, but he's managed to pull it back.
And Sainz still trying to get that lead back. And a bit of an opportunity there, but they're once again forced into a single file line.
Through this hairpin now into what will be the final lap of the Imola Grand Prix.
And the white flag is out. Charles Leclerc flying through the course. Carlos Sainz still trailing him, still hoping to hold on. And now he's getting pretty close. He's getting pretty close. As we go to the first person view once again. But it is still Leclerc. As it has been
an interesting race we've had today here at Imola, and I'd like to take the opportunity to say thank you for having me.
Thank you for being on. I don't believe I've ever had someone alongside me for these commentary jobs, or at the very least,
It's been a pleasure.
They didn't do much talking. So I thank you for being on here. I hope to see you next weekend in Monaco, and then the weekend after that for the Spanish Grand Prix as well, as our Formula One coverage continues on the Beagle Sports Network.
Excellent. But through this final hairpin now,
as they come through, I think that's going to be all. No chance for Sainz. He will not be able to pull it out in the end.
The final turn into the...
And after it all,
is this the start-finish straight? And
Charles Leclerc is the winner.
Charles Leclerc is the winner of the Imola Grand Prix.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Thank you for being on.
Thank you for having me.
And we will now go to the victory celebration. Victory this afternoon at Imola for Charles Leclerc, the Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix. He takes first place, and he will have that victory in his back pocket going into next week's Monaco Grand Prix. Of course, he will be competing in his home country as their most famous sporting icon. But until then, we will see you next time. Tomorrow night we've got WWE Night of Champions from Saudi Arabia. But Friday we will bring you the Monaco Grand Prix from Imola Raceway. Goodbye and good night.